Good morning and welcome to Liverpool Transfer Daily here on the Blood Red channel. I'm Guy Clarke. Joining me is Liverpool.com's James Martin as we talk the latest in the midfielder merry-go-round in the transfer rumours. We will check in on the rest of the Reds rumours. Get involved in the chat box. Your comments and questions welcomed. We'll get to as many as we can throughout the course of the show. But first things first, James, before we get into the transfers, yesterday, of course, was Champions League group stage draw day and Liverpool getting Ajax, Napoli and Rangers. Your take on that?
Yeah, it was an interesting draw. I think there's some good matchups in there. I think Liverpool will be favourites to progress from that group, but I think pretty much any four teams that are drawn out, that probably would have been the case. So I suppose on balance, it's probably a slightly harder draw than Klopp would have maybe been hoping for. I mean, when Ajax came out from pot one, you're thinking, okay, that's pretty good. I mean, no disrespect to Ajax, of course, they were Champions League semi-finalists not all that long ago. Bit of an unknown quantity now. Eric Ten Hag's left, but lots of good players in there. Who knows if they'll hold on to Anthony? But there's a reason United are bidding crazy amounts for him at the moment. There's Steven Bergwijn went there from Tottenham this summer. He's settled in nicely so far. But in terms of the who we could have got from pot one, probably a nicer draw. You've avoided your Real Madrids, your Bayern Munichs, your PSGs of this world. So got to take that. But then from the other pots, I think, much less luck for Liverpool. Napoli are always tricky. They've caused us some problems in the past. Very, very nearly knocked us out in the group stage the season where we went on to win the Champions League. Needed an Alisson masterclass to even keep us in the competition that year. Of course, times changed. That was 3 years ago now. But third in Serie A last season. They're just always there, aren't they? Always there or thereabouts as a useful outfit who can cause problems. And then Rangers, who I can't say I'm necessarily thrilled about taking on either, because particularly going up to Ibrox, it's going to be a ridiculous atmosphere. That they've been aspiring to get back into the Champions League proper for some time. It's going to be just oppressive in terms of the atmosphere, the pressure that Liverpool feel when they go to that ground, and I'm sure the away support will be pretty impressive as well. So Liverpool, of course, will be heavy favourites. The Premier League is just poles apart from the Scottish League in terms of the finances involved and duly the teams that can be put out on the pitch. But it does have the feeling of one where an upset could happen.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think for me, the standout tie probably Rangers, as you mentioned there. Probably not the easiest one, and the atmosphere at Ibrox will be electric, as I'm sure it will be at Anfield when they come to play Liverpool at home as well. But yeah, let's get into the transfers. First one up to talk about then, Fede Valverde of Real Madrid. I mean, very much a multifunctional midfield player. Got the assist, of course, in the Champions League final. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it makes a decent amount of sense. Whether it makes sense for Real Madrid to sell, I think is probably the major selling point. I think any inkling they had that they might let him go probably went away when they sanctioned the Casemiro move. I think that might leave them a little bit light now if they were to sell Valverde. But if he were for sale, I could see why Klopp would be keen. He sort of fits that profile, doesn't he? I mean, he's more of a number 8, but he does have those kind of defensive instincts. I imagine at a push we could put him into that number 6 role to cover Fabinho, and a lot of the targets that have been mentioned this summer are those kind of hybrid players who can play both of those roles. I think that was why the club really wanted Tchouaméni. He's the most obvious fit for that kind of dual role. The other links since then have kind of been players who have a clear preferred position out of the number 6 and the number 8, but could maybe do a bit of a job in the other one. And I think Valverde does fall into that box. He's also played on the right wing quite a lot. It looked like that might be his sort of new position for Real Madrid for a time. I think maybe Casemiro's departure again changes that equation a little bit, but certainly he's got a lot of his minutes recently out on the right. And whether Liverpool will use him there a lot, probably not, because of a certain Mo Salah, but that's another area of depth which maybe hasn't been talked about enough, in the sense that there's no one really directly behind Salah who's a natural in that right wing role. It's a case of maybe moving Elliott there, although he does seem to be making that centre mid position his own, or going even further down the youth ranks. There's Cade Gordon, but it's no one who you'd necessarily be thrilled to be chucking into a huge match.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Let's take a look into the chat box. Arthur says, "Dear my beloved Liverpool, please sign a midfielder." Max says, "It's been 5 days since losing to United and still no midfielder. What a joke." Of course, so many people wanting a midfielder. Benjamin saying, "Come on, please sign a midfield player." Charlie's not too confident, though, says, "We're not going to get anyone." Kumar, regular on the Transfer Daily show, says, "Signing Valverde would be good, but will cost us the chance of signing Jude Bellingham next year." Another comment saying here, Jude won't sign next year if we don't get the Champions League. So act now. It is interesting, kind of maybe what stance it could have Liverpool's progression in the Champions League. Ahmed says, Real Madrid won't want to sell us Valverde, so they have a clear room for Bellingham so that we don't have money for Bellingham next season. Take on that, James? What do you think?
Oh, that would be a bit of 4D chess, wouldn't it? I mean, you
Yeah,
wouldn't
do you
look
think they're
past it.
intertwined?
It's possible. You never put anything past Real Madrid. They're sly operators in the transfer market, but I think they are intertwined in the sense that one would have a knock-on effect on the other. I tend to agree with what Kumar said in the sense that if we were to go big on Valverde this summer, I'd be surprised if we then went big again on Bellingham next summer. And Real Madrid, who have probably been mentioned in association with Bellingham the next most of any club after Liverpool, certainly if they did lose Valverde this summer, I agree that they probably would be going for Bellingham even harder next summer. So it would have that sort of double complication for Liverpool in the sense that, yeah, they have less room for Bellingham and Real Madrid have more need for Bellingham. Whether that's why Real Madrid would sell us Valverde in the first place, I think that might be a stretch too far. But certainly, it's worth considering the knock-on effects that any such deal would have.
Oh, well, the rumours saying £75 million for Fede Valverde. He's 24. I mean, that is Van Dijk money. Is he worth that?
Well, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Shrameni went for similar sort of sum earlier. He's younger. You'd maybe say he has a higher ceiling, but I suppose the question is how much value someone who can play that squad role holds for Liverpool. I mean, you would be overpaying in terms of just purely looking at the individual player. Is he as good in his position as Van Dijk is at centre back? It's always hard to make those kind of comparisons, but you'd have to say no, probably not. But does he fill as big a need as Van Dijk did? Well, maybe. I mean, the midfield has been found wanting so far in the season. It's early days, but looking forward as well, even once the injured players are back, there's a very aging midfield profile. So, a very, very good midfielder, whether you put him in the elite bracket or not, but a very, very good young midfielder who can come in and maybe, be the heartbeat of the Liverpool team for a good 6, 7, 8 years, sort of kickstarting the next generation, the next great Klopp team. It's hard to necessarily put a price on it, especially when you're this late in the window and no one's going to be thrilled about selling genuinely good players. So I think if FSG are going to leave it this late, they're going to have to accept some kind of uplift on price. So, taken in isolation, yeah, I think Liverpool would be overpaying. But in terms of the bigger picture, would it be worth paying a fee like that? I think there's a decent case for it.
Yeah, Denver's is in agreement with you in today's market, yes, but that price is inflated. Kumar reckons that he's worth 50 to 60 million, not the 75. And Denver also saying that he thinks that with Real Madrid not getting Mbappe, they'll push for Bellingham even more. That is one to keep an eye on. You mentioned there before, though, James, how you said obviously the later it goes in the window, the more chance that price goes up for Fede Valverde. What about Youri Tielemans, though? Because Kumar, he's the other player we've got to talk about, says Tielemans is the only realistic option. It seems with him, the latter, the later the window goes, maybe the cheaper his price gets.
Yeah, it seems that way. Leicester maybe caught unawares. I don't know why, because they've known the contract situation for a little while, but it seems like, yeah, that asking price is just going down and down as they face the prospect of losing him potentially on a free transfer, which could be negotiated as early as next January, of course. And they've still not signed anyone, so you're questioning what's going on with their finances. You'd think they need to raise some funds from somewhere if they have any plans of doing anything at all in the last few days. So, yeah, I mean, prices as low as 16 million have been mentioned in various outlets. I think that came from Belgium, that report. I'd be very surprised if they did let him go for something as low as that. But, if the price is dropping to anything, even in the general vicinity of that price, it does seem like one Liverpool should be looking at. Is he the grand answer for the next 6, 7 years? Possibly not, but he's one where you could sign him and you could still look at Bellingham next summer and neither of them would be completely redundant. Tielemans maybe goes from a starter to the next one down if Bellingham comes in next summer, but he's still very much in and around the squad. He's not going to shoot down the pecking order, especially again when you consider Milner's 36, Henderson's 32, Thiago's 31. Tielemans again is in that age bracket where once those guys move on, or maybe just reduce their minutes, he would be there to step up.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Almost kind of, I said it on a stream the other day, maybe replacing kind of those Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain minutes, or even a mash of Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Naby Keita's minutes. If the two of those were to move on, be interesting to see how that does play out. We want to get your comments and questions in. Mitch, being comedian, says, how do you know how high Tchouameni's ceilings are? Heard he lives in a modest 2-bedroom in the centre of Madrid. Well done, Mitch. Thanks for getting involved. Kumar saying we need to move away from midfield options like Henderson, Millie. They're in their 30s and we need to start playing the younger players. One here says, I find it baffling that we've not been linked more heavily with De Jong. He's still got to reach his prime and has clearly got the talent. For me, I think that the thing with De Jong is probably centering around wages.
Yeah, I mean, I won't mention his ceiling because I'm sure Mitch is on the lookout. But yeah, it's like the comment says, he probably does still have room to develop. He hasn't hit his prime yet. He's in that age where Liverpool like to make their signings. Like you say, yeah, I think the mess at Barcelona is one which Liverpool have just decided to skirt around as much as possible. Like there's the big issue of deferred wages as well as whatever wages he is on. No one's really been able to untangle that web just yet. Manchester United, by all accounts, have been trying to do so all summer. Chelsea looked like they were getting involved, but I think maybe they've also been a little bit daunted by the prospect of working out exactly what's going on with the financial situation. But yeah, even assuming Liverpool could make their way through that labyrinth, they are then faced with what is undoubtedly a big wage packet to pay at the end of it. De Jong, he seems to be quite happy in Barcelona. No one's entirely sure why, given the mess there and the fact that he's not necessarily first name on the team sheet anymore either. So on the pitch and off the pitch, you'd think there's reasons for him to leave, but he seems to want to stay. So he's not going to take a big reduction to come anywhere else. So yeah, I think that probably is the major stumbling block.
Yeah, no, Ahmed's got in touch again, says, I'd rather split up the 120 million that is obviously being spoken about with Jude Bellingham, maybe fee wages and all in on 3 players for 40 million. The likes of Mateus Nunes, of course, who's moved to Wolves, Moses Caicedo, who we've spoken about a number of times from Brighton, and Lucas Paqueta, who's subject of heavy speculation from West Ham United. I understand where Ahmed's going with kind of saying break it up between 3 players, and I suppose Mateus Nunes would this summer have fallen into that price bracket. But you look at Brighton and how they've sold players, the likes of Ben White and Mark Cucurella over the last couple of years. I'm sure with Caicedo, they're probably going to be looking at least 40, if not higher than that, when it maybe comes to selling him, even if that is next summer. And Lucas Paqueta, the talk that Lyon are holding out for somewhere between 50 and 60 million pounds for him. So if you want to buy top players, they do cost top dollar, don't they? Mark's got a good point here, though. James, he says, morning, with the group stages being done by November and then the World Cup break, and for us to be amongst the top of the table, it'd be better and safe to get at least one more player in now. There is so many games, isn't there? Liverpool have already lost ground, and basically Mark saying there, one player will kind of hopefully safeguard of pushing back towards the top of the table in the Premier League and not being able to be too bogged down by the Champions League, which starts in 10 days or so, and will finish by the start of November.
Yeah, it's a fair point. The congestion is certainly something to consider. The problem with these injuries is it's just such a cumulative problem, because once a certain amount of players get injured, then you have to keep on playing the ones who aren't injured over and over again, which inevitably increases the chances that they'll get injured. So at the moment, Liverpool have what looks like a reasonably strong first 11, but the bench is pretty barren at the moment, apart from a couple of promising youngsters. So yeah, you're basically running them into the ground, and that's just going to get much, much worse once the Champions League fixtures kick in. So yeah, there's a strong case that at least one extra body is needed to sort of at least limp through to that winter break and still be in contention. No one's asking us to be top by then. I think probably already that you might suggest Liverpool have left themselves too much to do to be in that position, just because of the standards Man City have set in recent years, and the fact that 7 points dropped, is it already? That's quite a So it's quite a substantial tally in the modern Premier League. So yeah, it's more about just being in contention by then, and it's going to be a stretch with such a thin squad given the absentees at the moment.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Right, final few. DPS gets in touch. There's no chance we're going to be signing De Jong, Valverde, or Bellingham this summer. The only player we could get of high quality now would be Tielemans. FSG won't spend that big this late in the window. Well, back in 2017, they put 2 bids in for Thomas Lemar, totaling nearly £70 million, and then went and got Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain on deadline day for £35 million. So, as much as that's not the fee that is being spoken about with Valverde, they have done it before in the past. So many people in the chat box suggesting that Youri Tielemans is the man. And Mac making the point, we play Newcastle on the 31st of August. No new midfielder. We'll get smashed. Newcastle almost beat City. We have no chance. That's the kind of attitude that we really want here on the Blood Red channel. Really positive and upbeat. But James, just final thought on it. Do you think, or rather than do you think, how desperate do you think the search for a midfield player is? Do you think it's reactionary to what's happened at the start of the season, or do you feel that actually this really should have been addressed earlier on in the window?
Well, I think it's both. It should have been addressed earlier in the window, but maybe we needed this start to the season for everyone to realise it. It's unfortunate that these injuries have piled up so quickly already, but were these circumstances unforeseeable? Well, no, clearly not. I mean, if you look at who's got injured, Thiago, that can hardly go down as a shock anymore. Naby Keita's the latest. No one's raising too many eyebrows at that. These aren't players who up to now have had flawless availability records. And yeah, potentially it was naive to think that we could rely on that group. But equally, if you're in FSG's shoes, you've just come very close to a historic quadruple last season with this squad. You've then spent 70 odd million or more on Nunes, and you've got cover for right back, which was one of the main positions Liverpool fans are talking about last season as a clear hole in the squad. So yeah, you can, and then Fabio Carvalho, who can play in the midfield. So I understand why FSG would look at it and think, okay, well, we could do with another midfielder, but we can probably get by another season. But yeah, I think what the start of this campaign has done has really dispelled that notion. Whether it's enough to force FSG into the market this late, which, as we touched upon, isn't necessarily their favourite thing to do. Well, the next few days will tell, won't it? But I think it's shown that they need to.
Yeah, most definitely. Right, that's all we've time for this morning on the Liverpool Transfer Daily. Thanks for getting involved in the chat box. Do make sure to drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the Blood Red channel if you haven't done so already. We will be bringing you Jurgen Klopp's pre-match press conference to come later on over on the Blood Red YouTube channel. But from myself, Guy Clarke, and James Martin, thanks for joining us this morning. Until next time, it's bye for now.